mute. Well, welcome everybody to our Friday during Family History Month, Clayton Library Presents. We'll be starting our presentation at 2 o'clock. Please feel free while you're waiting to go ahead and enter in the chat section where you're from. We love to know that, how far and wide everyone is coming from. So that would be great. And I would like to mention also, if you have the opportunity, or would you please, make sure your microphone is muted and your cameras are off. Oh, wow, we have somebody, Doran, from California, Colorado, Texas. Oh. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Iowa, Pennsylvania, very nice. You are more than welcome for this. We are very pleased to be able to bring this to you. Let's see where else we're coming from. In the area. Iowa, wow. We really like doing these because, of course, you know, usually for programs when we have them in place, you know, there's usually a 50-mile radius that people will come from. Not in the 21st century of Zoom.
No.
Again, welcome everyone to our Clayton Library Presents Friday presentation during Family History Month. We'll be starting relatively soon, a couple minutes. Please feel free to add where you're from in the chat box. Oh, Matt heard me in a webinar last Thursday. What was last Thursday? Who knows? It's October, you guys.
Is it all a blur?
It's all a blur. It's all a blur. Seems like the vacation that I took in February was like 5 years ago. The vacation has been from the couch to the front of the house now. We're out on the patio.
On a good day.
On a good day, yeah.
Hey, Sue, we have a short little question here from Muriel. She's asking about the DNA show, how she can view that one.
Unfortunately, you cannot view it. Since it was a professional speaker, she did not give us permission to upload it. I can say that her handout is on the same page. There is a link to the handout at the very top of the chat, and we'll put it in periodically. Her handout is available through the 2nd of November. I am not sure if she has that presentation someplace else. She might do a Google search for it. She might have had it out on Roots Tech or someplace, or maybe on a subscription website, but we can offer her handout through the 2nd of November. I'm sorry, Muriel. A lot of Texas people, hello. Spring break lasted 6 months, no kidding. Yeah, I know that you sign up for all these things, forgetting about the Zoom. I've done that too this week. Sign up for a Zoom and then forget about it, or something comes up and you miss it. So, okay, well, it's 2:01, everyone. Yes, Matt, thank you very much. If you have a subscription, check Family Tree webinars to see if she hasn't presented for them also. So Family Tree webinars is another way to do this. So I am Sue Kaufman. I am the manager of the Clayton Library, and along with me, I have my colleague Mitchell Clendenning, who is with us, and then our speaker today, who we'll introduce in a moment. I would like to thank, of course, our HPL programming team, Justin from HPL programming, and our Clayton Library programming team for putting these together, especially during Family History Month. Again, the chat box is there for you, as everybody has been putting. We'd love to know where you're from. And do feel free to put any comments or questions that you have in that chat box, and we will address the questions at the end. The handout for today is in your email confirmation link. And then also, as I mentioned, periodically, we will be putting it in the chat box, so you can ask, you can access that. So today, I am very excited to introduce Doran Glenn, who is the Chief Deputy District Clerk of Galveston County. She was BOI, and for those of you that don't know, and I'm not from Texas, but I learned this, born on the island, born and raised in Galveston, graduating from Ball High School. She attended Galveston College and then went on to graduate from the University of Texas in Austin with a Bachelor's of Arts in Political Science, double majors in History and Sociology. Prime to do genealogy with that background. We're going to get her in here. She also attended the LSU Law Center, graduating in May of 1992 with her law degree. And then she returned to Galveston to practice law on the island. The offices that she worked in were James Schweitzer, and then she also went to practice law with Yarborough, Jameson, and Gray, and her specialty was family law. In 2002, she started the family law section for the office of Mills, Shirley, Eckel, and Bassett. And then in 2007, she left private practice and began her career in judicial support in the Galveston County District Clerk's office, serving a number of roles and eventually as a district clerk in 2012. She currently serves as the Director of Governmental Affairs for District Clerk John Kennard. So I forgot to put up a couple slides. So here is our second slide. I'm sorry, our second slide does show us where you can find the handout if you need to. Whoops, sorry. And then this is right, we're all doing, and then I will show this slide at the end. It's our upcoming programming, but let's get to Doran right now, okay? Sorry. I would like to remind everybody to microphones and cameras off, and Doran, please, just let me know when you need to move the slide. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sue. I sure appreciate that. Thank you for the kind introduction. Everyone, I'm so happy to be here with you today. I've had the pleasure of speaking to a variety of groups that are interested in genealogy around the Galveston County and Bay Area. And in doing so, it came to my attention that this topic in particular, the topic of searching court records and the best way to do that and the information that you can get while you are reviewing these records might be a presentation that folks would be interested in. So I developed this presentation with this type of research in mind, and I certainly hope that you all find it interesting. As Sue mentioned, I'm an attorney by trade, but currently with the Galveston County District Clerk's Office. One of my hats is to manage the jury system, but overall, we are the custodian of court records. And as I go through the presentation, I'll talk a little bit about the fact that another office, which is the County Clerk's Office, also has those roles and duties as the custodian of court records. So I'm going to go through a little bit of a basic overview of what to keep in mind as you are searching court records. Then I'm going to talk a little more specifically about certain types of records and the information that you may be able to find in those records. So I'm ready for the next slide, Sue. Thank you. Again, in terms of basic information, make sure that you are searching in the right county, okay? Remember that case documents are specific to the county. You are not going to be dealing with a document that is applicable to the entire state. When you are talking about court or case records, you are dealing with county-specific records. So if your family members settled in Galveston County, that's great. Come on down and search our records. But if they're in Brazoria County, Galveston County isn't going to be much help to you, okay? So that's the first thing, is just be mindful, because we have some areas, just even in Galveston County, a city like Friendswood, that if I'm not mistaken is actually one city, but part of 3 different counties. So that's the first thing to be aware of. The second thing, and I will talk about this in a little more detail later, is make sure you're searching in the right office, okay? So the Galveston County District Clerk's office, for example, we are the custodian of all the felony records and family case records, but the county clerk's office is the custodial they're the keepers of the records of misdemeanors and other types of records, which again we will talk about. But my point is this: if you search the records of the district clerk's office and you come to a point of frustration because you can't find what you want, it's possible that maybe it was the county clerk's office. Back in a number of decades ago, there was a good bit of overlap between the records that those offices kept. Now it is a little more distinct, but my point is this: be mindful of which office, the district clerk or county clerk, that you are searching, and that if you hit a brick wall with one of those, maybe you wouldn't hit a brick wall with the other. So I'm ready for the next one, Sue. Thank you. Now, each case is going to be associated with a case number or a cause number, okay? Do not worry if you don't have that. In all likelihood, you won't have that. In most cases, you won't even know if there is a case record to be found. You're hoping that there is. So for the most part, with these offices, the clerk that's assisting you can search with just the name of the individual, okay? So if you do happen to have a case number, that's terrific. But if you don't, it does not mean that you will not have a successful search. Most of the indexes that we have in our offices allow us to link to the individual's name. Now, there are a few exceptions to that, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, but one big exception to that is this: if the family member that you are seeking information about was not the perpetrator of a crime, but the victim of a crime, the victim's name will not be listed in our case indexes, right? The perpetrators would be if that perpetrator was actually formally charged with an offense, okay? So again, the name will get you started. You do not have to have the case number, but if you have it, it's great. Another thing to be aware of: some of these case records are confidential. We're going to talk a little bit about which ones typically are, but be aware that not everything that you are trying to seek is going to be accessible to you without taking some additional steps, okay? Another thing, be aware that older case records are not all going to be kept on site. As with most offices of any sort, the district and county clerk's offices all around the state are reaching maximum capacity with storage. And so we have found that many of these offices maintain an off-site storage area for these records that, for example, in the case of Galveston County, go back to 1839. So my point is this: if you are working on some sort of a deadline, whatever that deadline is, give yourself enough time to have the clerk's offices go to their offsite location to obtain the record that you're seeking. And bear in mind too, most of these offices do not have the manpower to send someone to their offsite location every single day. Most will do so a time or two a week. So just be aware of the limitations that are put on these county offices right now. Ready for the next one, Sue? Now, let's talk a little bit about some of the specific case records and some of the information that you can find. Divorce records. Well, first of all, these are records that are kept in the district clerk's offices in all of the states. Now, the only exception is in some of the smaller counties, you will find that they have one person that serves as both the county and district clerk. But in most of the 254 Texas counties, you have an independent county clerk and an independent district clerk. Family case records of all sorts will be housed by the district clerk of the county in question. The divorce record, obviously, a divorce is a court action to dissolve a marriage. The first document that's filed is called the original petition. Now, this isn't terribly rich with information, but it has some information. The name of the parties, the date that they were married, typically the date that they were separated, okay? Also the name of the children. So even just an original petition can have some information for you. I mention this in part because you do see in some cases that an original petition for divorce was filed, but the case was never finalized. So the next document I'm going to talk about is the final decree of divorce, which is the final document, the document once signed that dissolves the marriage. But some people start the process and don't finish the process, and that's fine. That's their right to do so. But you may find a case record, you may find an original petition for divorce, which gives you a little information, but just not quite as much as a final decree of divorce. So this document is signed by the judge. It contains a great deal of information. Now, we'll say this. Older decrees do not contain as much information as these new decrees, okay? The new decrees, and I say new, forgive me, I'm aging myself, in the last 20 to 25 years, they contain so much information that I can tell you without knowing anything about the case that if children are involved, these documents will be at least 50 pages long. I don't need to know any more detail to tell you that if children are involved, it'll be at least 50 pages, and if children aren't involved, it'll probably at least be 30 pages. The older divorce records, the older divorce decrees were not as rich in detail. They got to the basics of it, who the people were, they got divorced, and that was done. So do be aware that the further back you go in time, the less detail will appear in these divorce records. But divorce records, and especially the decree, the final decree, can be a great source of information about everything from the dates of birth to the parties, where they lived, property, debts, assets, issues with regard to children, even name changes, right? Because, and we will talk about those as a separate cause of action, but remember that some women, as part of a divorce action, would request a name change, typically to their maiden name, sometimes to a previous married name. But there is a lot of information in these decrees. Now, the post-divorce actions that you are likely to see, and they would be in the same divorce record, these could be modification actions or enforcement actions. Okay, a modification is where a person is coming forward to ask that a portion of the decree be modified. I'll give you a good example, a child support obligation. They're asking that that be increased or decreased. You also see enforcements where something in the decree was not done, and one of the parties is asking that the court see that it is done. For example, the transfer of property or perhaps a visitation provision in the decree. My point is these post-divorce actions do appear in the same case file. They do not have a brand new case number. And again, that is true in Galveston County. I will say it is possible that in some of the other counties around the state, maybe they do give the post-divorce actions a new cause number, but I believe it's safe to say that most post-divorce actions will be in the same cause number. So if you find the divorce case, all of this will be in one case record. Now, for the most part, these divorce records are not confidential, okay? I know that seems a little hard to believe, but they are accessible and open to the public, okay? Now, nowadays, you see that almost all of these records are digitized and everything is virtual and etc. But for the older case records, you're talking about an actual paper record. And if you come and they do a search and they find the record for you, again, maybe off-site, but you are able to look at that, you are able to get copies from that, okay? Because they are not confidential. Now, it is possible that if the parties were high profile, locally or otherwise, that they asked the court to seal the case record. And if the court sealed it, that means that the judge entered an order that said, nope, nobody can see it. So know that different circumstances may indicate that a record that is not confidential just by operation of law is confidential by court order. But again, you will know that, the clerk will know that, and then y'all can talk about the options. Ready for the next one, Sue? Okay, a suit affecting parent-child relationship. Listen, this is a pretty fancy name for a case action that is filed that deals with families, typically deals with children, but does not involve a ceremonial marriage and therefore a formal dissolution of the marriage. So let's say the two parties are together and they've had children and now the relationship is done and they need court guidance regarding care, custody, visitation, and the support of the children. So these two are typically not, as a rule, not confidential. They would have information about the children and about where the parties resided, etc. These could also include paternity actions, which are not confidential. That means an action to establish the parentage between a child and a parent. And it could include a termination action. Those are confidential. If an action is brought forward seeking to terminate the legal parent-child relationship, then that is going to be confidential. Now, cases that involve children's protective services, we typically don't categorize those as suit affecting parent-child relationships because many times with the CPS cases, the Children's Protective Services cases, there is some extreme emergency. There is some issue where the state is coming before the court to get an order to remove the children from the home for the immediate protection of the child. Regardless, CPS cases are confidential. Okay, so a standard suit affecting parent-child relationship case in which the parties are seeking assistance because they were not married and yet they're no longer together, they need court assistance. Those are typically not confidential, but certain ones are, such as a termination and a CPS case. I'm ready, Miss Sue. Let's go into adoptions. Now, adoptions are definitely confidential, but don't make that fact end your search or stop you from beginning your search. Let's go over some basics. Be aware of the county in which the adoption was granted, okay? It doesn't matter so much where the child was born. The issue is, where did the parties live and reside? Where was their legal residence and domicile? And that gives you the indication of which county the adoption would have been filed in. So don't allow your full focus to be where the child was born. Try to turn your attention to where the child was placed and what was the legal residence and domicile of the family adopting the children. Now, all adoption records will require a court order for you to have permission to see them, okay? That is the nature of the beast. It does not matter if you are the now adult that was the one that was adopted. It doesn't matter if it was your parent. You still have to get permission. The order, the motion and order is a motion in order to inspect. A motion to inspect is filled out. It is very simple. It is a form that, at least for our office, the Galveston County District Clerk's office, and I would bet Harris County as well, it is a form that is available on our website. In other words, you do not need to hire an attorney to get permission to view these records. The motion is very simple. You fill out your name, give just something to indicate proof of your identification, and indicate for the court why you are seeking to review this case. Most of the time, it is a family member that is just seeking information, trying to identify other family members, etc. And I would say that most of the time, the judges are very sympathetic to these requests and will grant them, but there is no guarantee, okay? So even if the clerk just confirms that there is some case that matches the names that you gave, that does not guarantee that you will have access to review those documents, okay? Now, if you are given permission to review the case record, it can be a great source of information. That case record would give you the information of the biological parents, the adoptive parents. It would tell you where they resided. It would give you, in all likelihood, the original name of the child. It would give you the name if the child's name were legally changed as part of the adoption. All of these things are helpful because you all know that as you're doing searches and you hit a wall, you know that there has to be something that you're missing. Well, this type of thing is a perfect example of what you may be missing. Maybe you have the name that the child was given after the adoption was granted. Maybe you don't have the name, the actual original birth given name of the child. So keep in mind, adoptions are confidential. Be aware of what county the adoption would have been filed and granted in, and you will need the permission of the court to review them. If you can review them, it's a rich source of information, but just be mindful that you have to file a motion to inspect, but you can do so without an attorney. I'm ready, Miss Sue. Okay. I mentioned a legal name change. I've mentioned it twice already. Once as part of a decree of divorce, and that typically is where the wife is asking for permission to either go back to her maiden or a previous married name. The second example is a legal name change as part of an adoption. And you see this quite a bit, where not just the last name of the child, guys, please bear in mind, it could be every name of the child, first, middle, last. The name that that child started with and the name that they end with might be completely different. But what I want you to be aware of is that adults and children can also file legal name changes separate and apart from an adoption or from a divorce. Now, when I say a child, obviously an adult files it on behalf of the child, but just know that we see in the district clerk's office legal name changes where it is an adult that is seeking to change their name, or it is an adult that is asking for permission to change the child's name. Typically, these are filed in the district courts, and they are usually handled as a family matter, not civil. Now, technically speaking, any case that's not criminal is civil. But in modern legal times, we split between civil and family. And we have found in the courts in the recent decades that these legal name changes are typically handled through the district courts, and specifically the district family courts, because most of the time there is some underlying reason that might involve some family issue. Even if it is not a paternity, termination, adoption, there's something going on. Now, the original petition, and again, these are not confidential, all right? Again, unless it is associated with an adoption, bear in mind. But just a standard legal name change is not confidential. You see that the first document in these, very similar to what I discussed with the divorce, is an original petition. The original petition will reveal the name and address of the person that is seeking the change of name, and it will also give a reason. Now, here is where you might find some very interesting information. Here again, with an adult, let's say, all you were ever told or all you ever saw in the records was a name that postdated a legal name change. This might reveal to you for the first time maybe what the original name was and why they sought to change it. And there's a variety of reasons. Sometimes it has to do with an estrangement from family members. Sometimes it was a mistake on a birth certificate. I mean, you name it, and those are the reasons that you'll see. Now, I will say this. The petition also asks for the person that is seeking the name change to confirm that they are not seeking it because they're trying to get away from the law. They're not able to run from the law, and they're not able to run from debt, right? So the court is very mindful that they're just not going to let people roll on in and change their name so they can get away from law enforcement or get away from debt. But they are very understanding of the fact that people, for a variety of reasons, have a desire to change their name. The final order that is signed by the judge reflects what the new legal name is for all purposes. And that is all that it takes. Once that order is signed, that name is legally changed. Next, please, Sue. Okay, not that any of us would think to search in criminal records for any information from our family members, but let me just, for argument's sake, throw this information out there. So the district clerk's office has felony case records. Now, again, a felony is a more serious crime, whereas the county clerk's office is going to have misdemeanor records. Those are less serious crimes. Again, these records would include very detailed information about the person that is accused of the crime. Everything from address, date of birth, physical description, you name it. It will not contain detailed information regarding the victim, okay? Now, it will also tell you the ultimate outcome of the case, because remember, the fact that someone is charged and officially, formally charged with a crime does not mean that they were convicted of that crime, right? So being officially charged with the crime, which is typically an indictment, does not mean that they were convicted of the crime. So just bear that in mind. But that information, which we call the disposition of the case, would appear in the court case. Again, remember, you have to be mindful of which county the crime was committed in. okay? Because you're not in this instance even concerned with which county the accused resided in or the county that the victim resided in. You are talking about the jurisdiction of the county in which the crime occurred. So keep that in mind, because it may broaden your search just a little when you are seeking criminal case records. It would also, just so you know, not just the detailed information about the accused, it would tell you in the indictment what they are accused of. Okay. And there may be some there may be some affidavits or some other evidence that would give you really a good bit of information about the crime itself. So I'm ready for the next one, Miss Sue. Inquest. Oh my goodness. I'm developing a whole presentation on inquest. It's just one of my favorite things in the whole world. We have inquest records from the late 1800s until about the 1960s. Now, what is an inquest? An inquest is an investigation into the cause and circumstances of someone's death. So this typically arises when a person passes away and they're not in a hospital setting, they're not in the care of a medical professional, but their body is found, or even they're found at home, but nobody knows what happened. Very interesting circumstances. The inquest is conducted by the medical examiner. However, if there is no medical examiner in that county, then the inquest is conducted by the local justice of the peace. What you would find in these records, and again, they are fascinating, is the details of what each witness, now again, we're not talking about the witness to the person's death. We're talking about a witness to the discovery of the body. All right, whether it was the body was found at home or the body was found in the middle of the street, but there are always witnesses that saw or heard something, or even witnesses that knew the deceased and are willing to step forward and talk about what they knew of the deceased, had the deceased been ill, etc. Now, these records are technically confidential. However, the records that we have that are over 100 years old, they are not. These are records that we have in our possession. Current inquest records are kept in the possession of the justices of the peace themselves. But for the records that we have in our possession, you are able to review those records. They are not digitized. It would be something that a clerk would have to help you with, but we could certainly help you with it. Another thing that is interesting about these is that they typically involve the testimony, the written statement of a physician. And I'm telling you, the detail with some of these, I won't go into it because I don't know if some of you have just eaten and I really don't want to affect your digestion, but the detail that some of these doctors use as they discuss how they found the body and examining the body, it's just almost too much. But if you are aware that a family member died under some sort of suspicious circumstances and perhaps no one ever knew exactly what happened, it is possible that either the district clerk in that county or the justice of the peace in that county, or possibly the medical examiner, would have these court or these inquest records. Again, each county is going to be just a little different. For us, the justices of the peace did not maintain their own inquest records until about the 60s, and I'm really not sure why that is, but each county might be a little different. But just know, if a loved one died under suspicious circumstances and there was never any crime identified or committed, or a person accused of a crime, maybe there is still some information in an inquest record. Also with the inquest, we find that sometimes they have very interesting newspaper articles and clippings that they filed along with the inquest. And those are interesting too, to read a newspaper telling of something that happened right at the turn of the century. So, okay, Ms. Sue. Immigration and naturalization. Oh my goodness, this is like the mother lode, guys, of terrific information. I know that you all, I'm sure everybody that's on this call, y'all are way more sophisticated with all of this research than I am. But let me just tell you, in case you're not familiar, I have an entire presentation on this, and I'm kind of twisting their arm to let me come back and do this for you guys. But current records regarding immigration and naturalization are in the custody of the federal government. Back at the turn of the century, that was not the case. The laws in the late 1800s, early 1900s indicated that these cases could be filed in the courts of local jurisdiction, right? That could be a county court, a district court, even a municipal or a justice court. As a result, you find some of these counties or parishes, as the case may be, have immigration records. And you, for example, in Galveston County, find that both the county clerk and the district clerk has custody of immigration and naturalization records from the turn of the century. Because again, the party, the immigrant, could have filed the documents with either a local county court or a local district court. But these, also keep in mind, some of the offices that you will talk to may have a separate immigration record docket, and some will keep their immigration records within their civil docket, okay? I mention this, or their civil case records. I mention this because I have also spoken to county and district clerks. And there have been times that if I've mentioned immigration records, they look at me like I'm a little crazy, because if those records have not been kept separately, then they might very well not be aware that within their normal civil case records, there is this rich source of information. So if you go to a county or district clerk's office and ask to see their immigration records, and the first thing they say is, "I'm sorry, we don't have any," okay, take another tactic. Is it possible that you could just give them the name of the family member that you're trying to research, and maybe with their case name index, maybe they would find a hit. And then maybe once they pulled those records, they would find that, well, it's not just a civil case record for a breach of contract, it is actually an immigration and naturalization case. Now, these records, and again, in my presentation, I go through a lot of detail of what types of records you're likely to see in a case like this. But suffice it to say, the records that are contained in an immigration and naturalization docket or case, there is so much detail. The person's name, where they were born, where they immigrated from, where they immigrated to, what vessel they were on, what port they came into, visible physical marks, occupation, family members. I mean, it's just quite literally the mother lode of information. Pardon me. Some also contain a photo of the individual. Again, amazing, amazing records, an amazing source of information. And for us in Galveston County, our immigration records are digitized, meaning you can search our immigration records online. But I know that not everyone's are, but just again, bear in mind, be mindful of the county in which the parties resided. Don't focus solely on the port that the person came into, okay? So for example, The immigration records that we have information from people that came in from just about every port that you can possibly imagine. But if they made their home in Galveston County, then in all likelihood, we have their immigration records. So try to separate in your mind the knowledge that you have about the port that they came into and focus a little bit more on where did they make their home, their primary residence. And that might make it a little easier for you to track down some information. Okay, next, please. Now, I've made reference to the county clerk's office as we have gone through this presentation, but let me give you a little more information. The county clerk is also the custodian of all of the marriage records in that given county. Now, this too can be a very great source of information to give you the name of the individuals, the maiden name, certainly of the wife, the date that the marriage license was issued, where they ended up getting married, etc. Now, I'll tell you just as a note, in Galveston County, our county clerk digitized his records from the late 1800s through, I want to say, the early 1960s. And instead of destroying the original records, he is releasing the original marriage licenses to the parties, the family members that come and ask. So I, for example, was able to get my parents' marriage license, the original, and my grandparents. So keep that in mind. I'm not saying that each county is doing that, but at least in Galveston County, that is something that our county clerk decided to do, and I think it can be a very meaningful acquisition for a family. Now, the county clerk is also the custodian of probate and guardianship records, okay? Probate and guardianship. And I'm going to go over that just a little bit more toward the end of the presentation, but just bear in mind that when you're dealing with probate records, they can have a good bit of information, a good bit of detail. And so we'll talk just a little bit more about that. Now, also some family case records can appear in probate court documents. I know that sounds a little strange. It's the nature of the beast in the state of Texas. A probate court has jurisdiction that is very interesting and unique, and it enables that probate judge to extend jurisdiction to other matters if it will mean a more efficient handling of the case. So if the probate court is involved, it's possible that you can find more information in there than just information about a person who passed away and had a will or did not have a will. The county clerk is also the custodian of all real property records, okay? So any real property, deeds, anything else that is filed in the official real property records, that is going to be the county clerk. And again, by contrast, the district clerk's office handles the jury system. We handle all divorces and all felony records. The county clerk, they handle marriage and probate, and they also handle all elections. So next slide, please, Sue. So let's talk just a little bit more specifically about the probate records that are held by the county clerk's office. So when a person passes away, the first thing for you to be aware of is that the probate documents will be filed in the county in which the person primarily resided. I mention this because it's very possible that the person received treatment for last illness in another city or another county. That does not mean if they actually passed away in the other county that the probate records would be filed in that county. Let me give an example. If you have a person who resided in Galveston County, but went to Houston for medical care and passed away in Houston, the primary residence of the person, being Galveston County, would determine where that probate action was filed. Bear in mind, too, that some individuals will have a will and some individuals will not. Both of these scenarios can still go through the probate court. If the individual had a will, the court is going to review that will, make sure that it meets all the legal requirements, and admit that will to probate. If there is no will, then you're typically dealing with what we would call an heirship proceeding, a proceeding to establish who the heirs were. Either way, you may find some very interesting and detailed information. The names, of course, the name of the deceased, the name of the spouse, the name of the children. It can also give you information about property holdings because, for example, if a person dies with a will and there is an administration needed for that estate, then they may also file an inventory of the estate. That would give you a whole lot of detail, not just about personal property, but about real property. So maybe there were property holdings in a city or state or county that you weren't even aware of, but the probate court and the probate records help to reveal those to you. There may be family members that you were not aware of, half-siblings, stepchildren, etc. So the probate records can be very, very interesting. Now, these also are typically not confidential, okay? Again, there may always be circumstances in which they are confidential by court order, but as a matter of law, these are not. These probate records are not traditionally confidential. But again, if there is a will, a copy of that will would be included in that case file. If there is not a will and there were affidavits of heirship that were created, then those would also be included. Okay, Ms. Sue? So this is a little more specific to the Galveston County District Clerk's Office, but let me just share a little basic information with you about where to start. In Galveston County, we have a customer service department. Not every county is going to have this, okay? What you're going to find in some counties, both in the county and district clerk's offices, is that they have different divisions: criminal division, civil division, family division. So if there is a customer service department, I'd say start there. If not, start with any one of the departments that you think may be the most help, and then trust those deputy clerks to help get you to in the right direction. Do bear in mind that many of these offices have more than one location. Now, for Galveston County, as a smaller county, we only have one other location, and I speak for both the county and the district clerk's office, but some counties have multiple office locations, and for the most part, I would think they could help you equally in every location. Do bear in mind, again, as we discussed, some of these very old records are not digitized and they are not on site. So you may deal with a bit of a delay, but you'd probably have these clerks that could at least help you. Also, when you are seeking copies, remember that for these clerks, we speak in terms of either a certified copy or non-certified copy. In all likelihood, you would need a non-certified copy, okay? Certified copies are a little more expensive, and they typically are used when you are providing that copy to some other office. For example, if you are getting a copy of one of these documents and giving it to the Social Security Administration, yes, you need a certified copy. And not only that, it has to have a raised seal. There's all sorts of things that you have to consider. But if you are just getting a copy to share with family, then I would say that you probably need a non-certified copy. That'll be a little less expensive, so maybe that would help. I'm ready, Ms. Sue. Now, also keep in mind that I'd say in most of the offices you're going to deal with, that many of the case records that have been filed in the last 10 years are available online have been digitized, because you got to remember, we're in almost an exclusively electronically filed world now. So you do still have the original paper files in most cases that you can deal with, but in some cases, online might be your only option. Also, when you are pulling some of these records from some of the websites of some of these offices, you might be able to pull the record and make a copy, but it may have some sort of watermark on it, right? Unofficial or something of that sort. Now, I mentioned again with specificity, if you're with the Galveston County District Clerk's office and you're on the website, how you look for the different divisions. And I would say that any district or county clerk's office that you are dealing with, most of them do have a decent website. Okay, I'm not going to say they are all as sophisticated as the next, but I would say that whether or not you can search all of their case records online, it is still going to be some resource and some help to you. In some cases, you can do your whole search online. In some cases, you can't, but it will at least help you understand what are the locations of the office, what division may I need to speak to, who could I speak to, etc. Do keep in mind too, as I was mentioning before, I would say that most of these offices would give you certain resources and make them available online, including the motion and order to inspect. Again, remember, that is the document that you fill out and the clerk presents to the judge that will, if the judge approves it, give you permission to view a confidential case file. It is a very simple document. Again, it does not require an attorney, but bear in mind that the motion and order to inspect, or something that it might be called a little bit different, motion to have access to file, okay, something like that. But for Galveston County, it is a motion to inspect, and it's reasonable to think that you would be able to find and have access to such a motion on the website of the district or county clerk's office. Okay, I'm ready for the next one, Ms. Sue. Guys, this is my contact information. Please feel free. Even if the information you are seeking has nothing to do with Galveston County, if I can help give you some guidance or direction, I'm happy to do it. If I can't, well, I'll tell you that. But my direct line, my email address is on here. My office is actually at the Justice Center in Galveston, right here on 59th and Broadway. So I think that is the last. If you'll go to the next one, Miss Sue, I think it's just questions at this point.
So, wow. It was amazing.
Thank you.
It was amazing. And I mean, I know that I would think that everybody is like, yes, bring her back for the inquest records. Yes, bring her back for immigration naturalization. So yes, we will.
Yay. I accept already. I accept.
Thank you. I would look for Doran early next year. So
It's my pleasure.
That would be, you know, having been in this field, and all of us, I think there were so many nuggets to take away. And I mean, from us doing our own research, and then from my perspective of providing service to people, the motion to inspect, was amazing. It was amazing. Thank you so much. Next, what kind of questions do you have? You're muted. We can't hear you. I don't know why we can't hear you. No. No. Let me stop. No.
It shows that you are unmuted, but we are not able to hear anything. Would maybe try adjusting microphone volume?
Let's see. While we're waiting for Mitch with the technical difficulties, these are our presentations coming up. And if you have an email or reference question, by all means, call us and ask us. We are answering the phone to help you do your research. And boy, Doran, how nice of you to be, no, Mitch, we can't hear you yet. No, but how nice of Doran to be available for even if you're not doing Galveston County. What a wonderful resource. And then if you need any of us, if you guys have a group and would like us to do presentations, we can do that. Let me stop sharing my screen and then we still can't hear you, Mitch. Yeah, let me stop sharing it and then I can go through the chat while we wait. Let's see. Excellent presentation. Excellent presentation. Here's a question. My great-grandfather was sent to the state hospital. My mother was the only living heir, but has since died. And Muriel was denied access to his record to get information about the family. Have any information about that?
So are we talking about his records from the state hospital?
I don't know.
Okay, if they were the hospital records, I'm not too sure, and I'm sorry about that. I'm not, yes, I see that she's responded from the state hospital. I am not sure about the access for those records. I would imagine that there is a process, and I would imagine that the process varies a little based on how old the records are, and frankly, based on whether the individual whose record you're seeking is alive or not. I would, I guess, start maybe with I wonder if, well, not even the county health district, because these well, that's a really good question. I'll tell you what, if I can find a little more information on that, Sue, I will share it with you.
Okay, great.
But again, since if there was no court or case record with it, I'm a little stumped on that one.
Mm-hmm. Mitch, you want to try your audio? No. Nope. So, well, absolutely best presentation that we have heard on court records.
Thank you.
Let's see. Asking about a recording of this presentation. We are recording it. We are in the process of trying to get the library to upload them to our YouTube page. When we do that, we will make an announcement through our publicity and then also through the Clayton Library Friends page.
Wait, Sue, can I interrupt you for just a minute?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I just saw a message from my third grade teacher.
Oh, so you can see these too.
Yes, I can see them. Hi, Miss Fisherman. Is that the funniest thing in the whole world? I was Doran Danner when she knew me, but I guess the face looks relatively the same. And so, what a treat. I'm so sorry to interrupt.
No, that's the kind of interruption we like. That was
Love it.
Great story. It's a small world, isn't it?
It is.
Isn't it?
Sue, can you hear me now?
Yes, Mitch. Oh, good.
Oh,
Thank you,
okay.
Mitch.
Okay, and then another headphone bites the dust, I guess. We do have a lot of questions here. I was able to grab a lot of them. Mildred had a question early on. She's asking, where do we find maps for different years in different states?
In different states. Okay, for the most part, if you are looking for maps, you're going to look county to county by county, okay? Now, I would think that the state land office can offer some other options, but the county clerk's office will have maps that are specific to the geographical restrictions of that county.
Okay, and there were several people that tried to help as well in the chat log, and there are some links in there. Somebody suggested the Newberry Library in Chicago, which I know has a very good map collection. Okay, so we have a question from Billy, who says she or he's trying to find Polk County court records to document their 2 times great-grandmother and her children that were determined to be indigent pre-1870 and eligible to go to the Bayland Confederate Orphanage. Which court clerk in Polk County should Billy contact?
I would contact both the county and the district clerk, because even though the district clerk traditionally has family case records, back at the turn of the century, you did not see the designation between civil and family. That's the first thing. And remember that both of these courts, both of these offices, both county and district courts, are going to have civil case records. So it's possible that both of those offices, or either one, would have something that, even though what we would now consider a family matter pretty exclusively, it's very possible that one office, the district clerk's office, would have it because that is how it was characterized, or the county clerk's office would have it because, to be honest, at one point, some children were even listed as property, right? And so you would see, maybe even in a probate matter or something like that, the children listed in a way that we're just not used to seeing now as part of a traditional family case. But I would say hit both of those offices, because you may also see something that came part of a probate record, but those are good. And in fact, I have the contact information, I think, for the probate, for the Polk County. But honestly, if you just do research, if you just literally punch in Polk County District Clerk, boom, it's going to pop up the name of the clerk, office locations, phone number, the whole kit and caboodle.
Great.
We can see that Nick, since I don't have the slide up for your contact information again, Doran, Nick went ahead and put it in the chat box for everybody too.
Oh, terrific.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Doran Charlie has a question. He says he's asking, would a presidential pardon exist on a local level? He says his great-great-grandfather was rumored to have been pardoned by Teddy Roosevelt.
Oh, that's a super good question. I would think that yes, I would think that there would be some indication of that even at the local court case level, okay? So let's say there was a felony conviction in Galveston County, right? And if a pardon was granted by either the governor or the president, seems to me there'd be some reflection of that in the case record, even at the county level. So it might not be the original, maybe it's a copy of that was just sent to the court just to let them know, and maybe to make sure that the person got out of jail if they were in jail at the time or whatever. But yeah, I would think there'd be some indication of that in the local court record.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Gloria has a question asking, would a death of one party be included if the death occurs before the divorce is final?
I am going to say maybe, maybe not. What you would find, if the divorce was filed, then you are going to find a case record that has both parties and that shows an original petition for divorce. What you may see thereafter is not necessarily what we would call a suggestion of death, but what you may see is just a dismissal, a request for the case to be dismissed. It may or may not contain the detail about why the case was dismissed. It's worth looking if you feel that there was a ceremonial marriage and you understand that they were at least starting a divorce and it just didn't get finalized. There's probably a record to support that, but it may or may not be specific enough to let you know why the divorce was not granted.
Okay. Okay. I have a question from Mary, who I'm not sure if she was asking about the divorce records or the marriage records, but she asked, do all records contain the names of both parties? All I know is my mom's name and not the man she is supposed to have been married to.
It is my understanding, let's talk about the marriage records. Even if you just have one name, most of the indexes for these county clerk's offices will allow them to search just the one name. And if they get a hit, boom, they can pull it. That is also true with a divorce record. So even if you don't have both names, if you have one name, that should be enough to get some return on your search.
And so I think what Mary is also asking is if she does find the record, will it have both names? Do you
Yes.
think? Yeah.
Yes, I do. Certainly the marriage record, the marriage certificate would. It has to have the name of both parties, and same with the divorce petition. Absolutely. Whether the divorce is granted or not, when they came forward to open a case with that original petition, absolutely they had to have both names and the names of any and all children.
Okay, great. Now I have a question here from Gloria, who is asking, does it matter if all parties to an adoption are deceased for the release of the information?
No, in Galveston County, I do not find that the judges hold that as a primary standard. It may influence their decision some, but I do not find that they make that some sort of a requirement, that if somebody is still alive, you know, if the person that was adopted. So I don't think it's a hard and fast rule. It may be something they take into consideration, but I think they're more interested in the motivation, the reason that the person is seeking the information in the first place, which usually is a very innocent, a very good reason to help with family records and information, or maybe even health information.
Okay. Matt has a question here. He's asking, well, he says, I know your expertise is in Texas, but he's seeking a name change in the late 1800s in Massachusetts.
What I would say is that, and I'm sorry, I don't know if they're called counties up there or what they're called, but what I would say is if you have an idea of where your family member lived, what area, just a general area of where they resided, go to that court clerk. I would not think it would be a city court clerk. I would think it would be, again, the county for lack of a better term, but go even to not just that county, but maybe contiguous counties. It couldn't hurt to check, and they may very well have the record if there was a name change. Again, probably not a city clerk, but what we would consider a county or a district clerk for the courts.
Okay, okay. Jessica has it looks like a statement and a question. Jessica says that she was mistakenly handed an unredacted criminal court case that had some great genealogical detail. And she says, don't worry, it wasn't in your county. But she says the question is the motion to inspect that you mentioned that what Jessica needs to file to see this file again, or would parts of this file ever be made public?
Okay, and it really kind of all depends. So if what she's saying, it was a criminal case,
right,
and typically those are not confidential. And to be honest, there's also really the only specific redaction obligation that we deal with in Texas is with regard to Social Security numbers. Okay, so if she got information that should have been redacted and wasn't, then that might be a very case-specific situation, that perhaps those records in that case were sealed for some reason. But what she's asking is, does she have to go back and file another motion to inspect? I wouldn't think so. It seems to me if the motion was granted and they gave her permission and gave her copies from the file, that's probably all they have.
Okay. Well, Doran, we are running a little bit long. Are you okay for a couple more questions?
Sure. Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So Matt is asking, what if a cause is known, I guess, for a death? The example he gives is a railroad accident in Harris County in 1905. Might there still be an inquest?
Absolutely. So whether it is known or unknown for certain that it was a railroad incident, if there was not a witness to the death, if the death did not occur in a hospital or at a home under a doctor's care, etc., there very well may be. I've seen quite a few inquests, again, from Galveston County that involve these railroads. I mean, y'all, it's just amazing. I don't know how anybody survived back in the day, but it's very possible that the county in question would have an inquest record, whether it was all conclusive about exactly what happened. I bet that they would still take either the information from whoever came upon the body and the information from the doctor that looked at the body, that did the basic evaluation.
Okay, great. And I have another question here from someone who says they came in late, but they're asking if you could help them find records for someone who was killed by a train in Michigan, or do they need to find someone in that state?
I would say someone in that state would probably be a little more helpful, because they are going to know whether or not they have something that is similar to our inquest, right? This is what we call it here in Texas. I am sure that that state has something similar. Because again, in these instances, it may or may not have been some sort of criminal activity, right? Sometimes it's a legit accident. And so it falls in that category of not necessarily a criminal record, but not just a last illness, somebody was sick and passed away at home. So yes, someone in the state, I would say at more of the local level, again, either city or county. I don't know if someone at the true state level would be as helpful, but starting with a city or county or district clerk would be a good place to start.
Okay, it sounds like if they didn't die in their bed, there's going to be an inquest.
And you know what, y'all, let me give this as an example. When Justice Antonin Scalia passed away, there was no indication that there was foul play, but he was not in a hospital. He was not at home. He was at a ranch in Texas. So there was an inquest.
Sure.
You know, so again, no one said there was foul play, but there had to be an inquest because he was not under a doctor's care. He wasn't in a hospital. So, you know, again, you see these instances, again, some are very interesting where the witness saw so-and-so running down the street with an axe, you know, yeah, okay. Or the whole railroad business. But some of them are just where people are kind of scratching their heads and don't know exactly what happened.
Sure. To follow this line of questioning, I've got another question on inquests. The person is asking, are the inquests done in the county where the person died or the county where they were from?
From what I have seen, it is in the county in which they died, okay? Because in some instances, they have a little bit of a hard time making an identification, at least initially, okay? So in some cases, they have started the inquest and then only thereafter are they really able to identify the person and know where their permanent residence and domicile is. So it seems to me to be the jurisdiction where they end up, the city, the county, that's who ends up taking it and doing the inquest.
And would you clarify again, where do you go for the inquest? What office?
Sure. So currently, at least in Texas, either if there is a medical examiner in that county, they handle the inquest. If not, it is a local justice of the peace. In our county, for the period of time from the late 1800s until about the 1960s, for some reason, all of those records, even if the inquest was done by the Justice of the Peace, they were housed by the district clerk's office. So again, that might be a little different county to county.
Sure. Okay. I have a question from Charlie, who asks, how long would it take for an adoption record to go public? My grandpa on my mom's side was adopted in the early 30s.
To my knowledge, there is no automatic time period or any automatic transition from these to go from confidential to public. In my experience, it is a case-by-case determination based on who wishes to see the record and for what reason they wish to see it, and whether or not the judge in that instance is willing to give them access to it. Now, maybe in some states, there is some automatic after 100 years, it's not confidential anymore, but it's not my understanding that that's the case, at least in the state of Texas.
Okay. Okay. I have I had another question in here about the motion to inspect. Yeah, someone is asking, can you file a motion to inspect for someone who is committed to an insane asylum?
So if the court record, and I'm guessing that they're asking about like a commitment proceeding, maybe something
I would
like
think
that.
so, sure.
Okay.
It says committed to an insane asylum. Yeah.
Right. That is a really good question. I am not sure whether or not, since those will typically have so much just pure medical, personal medical information, I am not sure that they will allow those unless there is some extreme circumstance. Again, with the adoption records, yes, there are, it's the identity of the biological parent and the adoptive parent and the child's original name, but for a commitment, it's usually a whole lot more than that. So I'm not sure that the motion to inspect would be successful. Again, it doesn't cost anything. I guess it couldn't hurt, but I'm not sure that it would work.
Okay. Here's a question from Mildred about death certificates. Let me see. She says, I have a death certificate of my great-grandmother's son hit by a train, but it was in the 1920s and he was black. I had someone contact her. Or I guess she said that someone contacted her that he was in Michigan in the 1980s. So apparently a death certificate for somebody who turned up later, 60 years later. How do I clear this up?
Oh boy.
That's a question.
That's a good one. Yeah, see these railroads? I'm telling you, it all comes back to the railroads, guys. Let's just comment first with the death certificate. So the death certificates are kept by the county health authority, okay? So bear in mind that a death certificate is not considered a true court record, okay? I'm not trying to split hairs. I just want to offer that reminder. We're not talking about a death certificate as something that is a court or case record. So you're usually dealing with the county health authority to get that. In terms of, I guess, trying to clarify exactly how he died, again, I kind of loop back to the inquest. If there is some specific knowledge about where exactly he died, and I would say that the death certificate would have that, right? I mean, they would have the location of death, then maybe that jurisdiction would have some inquest record to provide a little more information about it.
Sure.
Especially if there wasn't any foul play suspected and there was no criminal case opened that the family is aware of.
Right. It sounds like she's also trying to pursue the fact that he was supposedly sighted alive much later.
And that's right. And that, which is fascinating in and of itself.
Yeah.
I don't know how to help with that one.
Maybe brothers or cousins or something.
True. Good point.
Yeah. Now Gloria is asking, would there be a court record at all from a death in a car accident?
What I would say is if there was a lawsuit filed in conjunction with it. So for example, if there was some sort of suit filed in a district court, because if a death was involved, it wouldn't be a county court because the amount that would be sought for something like the loss of a loved one would be very great, then the information about the death could be found in a court record, but it would only be if a suit is filed that is related to that incident, that accident.
Mhm. Okay. Okay. B. Beck is asking, says that they have an ancestor who is a judge um, who was, I guess, murdered. It's not clear here. Is there any way to find the judicial cases this judge was involved in?
Yes. So if you know which jurisdiction, so like, for example, locally, we have multiple county courts, we have multiple district courts. So if you knew that your family member was the presiding judge of the 211th Judicial District Court in Harris County, then yes, that clerk's office, the district clerk's office, would have records and they could pull just about every case. Now, again, if it was in the early, mid, late 1800s, those are probably not digitized. They're probably literally just in docket books, and it might require some manual searching, but every case that is filed has some sort of court designation. Now remember, back in the olden days, these judges didn't just have permanent offices in a certain location. You had circuit judges, right, that would only come to certain locations and hear certain cases for certain periods of time. But you may also check with the state bar association of that state. They would have records of the judges and who served in what capacity. You have some judges that serve in multiple capacities. We have a district court judge who is now a court of appeals judge. So it's very possible that they served as a judge for multiple jurisdictions, and the state bar of that state may be able to help with that.
Great answer. Thank you. Cynthia's just got a statement. She says that she's glad that she stayed for the questions because she's learned a lot.
Good.
I will point out in the chat log that there's some important information provided by our own Stephen Bykowski, who is here at Clayton. He gives some information that says Harris County has a medical examiner's office records from 1954 forward, and Justice of the Peace had jurisdiction before them. And then Nick Cimino of the Clayton Library Friends has posted a number of things. He posted a couple of links for doing research on mentally ill ancestors. I'm sorry, here's one from Cecilia, a question asking for divorce records that one party filed annulment. Would the records still be sealed?
No, traditionally an annulment is not confidential by nature. Again, by court order, if the parties, whether it's because they were high profile or there was some issue that they wanted to be withheld from the public, they may have asked that it be sealed, but for the most part, no. An annulment record, similar to an a divorce record, would be available to the public.
Okay. Mazzella is basically asking you, how does the way Texas handle records similar or dissimilar from other states?
Oh boy, that's a good question. I don't know, because I'm only familiar with Texas. Again, even between the 254 counties, there are so many differences in just one state. There's no way I can tell you what happens in the other states. But I'll say that what you find is there are some things that are very similar and very consistent. And then there are some things that are pretty different based on the jurisdiction and the specific, what we call local rules and local practices of each county and jurisdiction.
Okay. Yeah, that's one thing about records. It's a very local thing.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, there may be something at the bottom. Let me take a look here. No, that seems like that's about all the questions that we have for you.
Okay, well, I would like to, again, thank you. I would also, that last question about the variation in court records, I'd like to mention maybe looking at the Family Search Wiki at familysearch.org. Yeah, and then going into your state or going into your county, and then that can drill you down to how those records might be held. Mentioning Massachusetts also, depending on the time period, you might be looking at town records rather than county records. Like you mentioned, you didn't know what level
Good
they
point.
were at. Mhm.
Thank you.
So I would like to, in the chat, I would like to say that Matt says, needless to say, it sounds advisable to watch the Clayton emails for future presentations on immigration or naturalization records. And then that Inquest Records, I mean, I think, I would advise people, we do these at 2:00, so eat early.
Oh yeah, eat early.
Eat early. So again, watch our website, watch the Clayton Library Friends website for the uploading of these presentations. And a lot of Nick and some other people had posted Doran's contact information, but we do have her slides. The handout was her slides from the presentation, so her contact information is available in the handout also if you didn't catch it. So Mitch, unless you have something else to say, I will, do you have anything else, Mitch, that came in just at the end really quick?
No more questions, but I think right before we started, we did decide that this was going to be recorded and possibly posted in the future.
Yeah, we have
more information on that to come.
Yes, information on that to come. We have a number of presentations that I'm working with the HPL communications team to get these uploaded. So Doran, I'll let you know when it's uploaded so you can point people to that. But this was fab, absolutely fantastic.
Thank you. You're too kind. It was my great pleasure, really and truly.
You did a wonderful job, and it was really full of information. So I would like to thank you. I'd like to thank Mitch and our HPL team and our Clayton team for doing this, and all of you. Nice to see some names that we don't see very often coming in, and your third grade teacher, Doran.
I know. Miss Fisherman, email me sometime. My daughter is now a third grade teacher. It's a circle of life.
There you go. So thank you all for coming. And again, next week is, let's see, it's DNA with Enslaved Ancestors with LaBrenda Garrett Nelson at 2:00 next Friday. Go to our website or go through the Clayton Library Friends website to register. And thank you all again, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.